does that? Not even Dad. He uses his phone. This is an idea, a lesson that I actually preached a long time ago. Has anyone gone back and listened to a recording of themselves from what you would consider a long time ago? It's an assault. Anyway, this is an idea for a lesson I had, like I said, a long time ago, but it's something that constantly runs through my mind. I think I mentioned not too long ago how I've always been that guy that loves children. Like, I always wanted kids. I always played with kids. I enjoyed rocking kids to sleep, which, I mean, like on the list of how a normal high school boy functions, you've got rough houses with kids, if they like that at all, and then gets annoyed with them. And then you've got, like, likes playing video games with kids, likes playing board games with kids. And then there's this teeny tiny sliver of high school boys who enjoy rocking a 1 or 2 year old child to sleep. That was my area. It was me and me, as far as I knew. Like, I've always loved being around kids, enjoyed them, thought they were awesome, and they are. I mean, you spend time with kids, you can see that there are some parts of them that are fantastic. They're just so much fun to be around. And then there are other parts of them that are terrible. Like we have a name for it. We say, like, if someone is acting terribly, we can often call them childish. You're being childish. I mean, those are fighting words. If anyone throws that accusation at you seriously, it's not pleasant. Like, that's not a nice thing to hear. That I'm not childish, right? You're childish. Oh, hold on. That did sound a little, right? Like, that's kind of, we look at these parts of kids, right? That maybe when they don't get their way, they throw a fit. And some of them even have to be taken out, like Rosie right now, as I said it. Right, like, listen, sometimes when a child is upset about something, they want to lash out and hurt. I actually told Bonnie she did a great job the other day because Moses did something, I don't even remember what it was, and she was in the back of the car, and I just started hearing her groan, oh, right, like that, and I put my eyes back there, and you can see it written all over her face, rage. Her face was bright red, her eyes were beginning to tear up, and she's squeezing her hands as tight as she can. And I said, what's going on? She said, I'm trying not to hit him. And I thought, great job, because my goodness, have you not tried that hard in the past? Meaning, you've hit him before, and this time you're not. So you know what? We're going to say, great job, and next time we're going to talk about breathing instead of groaning. All right, so listen, when kids act childish, like, we all know what that looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like, right? We've all been in the vicinity of a childish kid. And so that brings this passage into sort of perspective, or maybe it muddies the waters. Look at Mark chapter 10. Mark 10, Jesus is doing what he does. He's teaching. He's among the crowds. But in Mark 10, there are these children that want to come and spend time with him. But it's not just the children. What's really interesting is it's the children and the children's parents. As a parent, when you recognize something incredible, this is a unique thing. If something was good growing up, this was for me growing up, if something was good, my mom would enjoy it for herself. But if something was excellent, my mom would save me a bite. All right? That's how you knew something was really, really good. And I didn't really understand that because, like, if it was excellent, you would want it for until I had kids. And I was like, no, if it's excellent, you're so excited to give your kid a bite. And so these parents had seen, heard about, knew about Jesus, and they didn't just leave their family to go find him. There seems to be these parents that were bringing these children to Jesus. Now, Mark chapter 10 and verse 13. It says that they were bringing children to him that he might touch them, and the disciples rebuked them. But when Jesus saw it, he was indignant and said to them, let the children come to me. Don't hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of God. Truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it. And he took them in his arms and blessed them, laying his hands on them. It's this really interesting scene. It's a really interesting scene where he doesn't seem to commend the parents, right? The parents are bringing these children to Jesus because touch my child, bless my child, let my child be in your vicinity, and let some of your awesomeness rub off on my child. That seems to be sort of the sentiment here. And Jesus is more than happy. Then his disciples think, and think about this. Like I feel like I've harped on this a couple times lately, but how old were these disciples? They were kids. It's like a kid being annoyed with another kid. Have you ever watched that happen? Where there's like a moderately older kid who's maybe 10 and they're annoyed with a 7-year-old, and you at 30 are looking at him like, you are both children. What's going on? Like the pot calling the kettle black here. Well, that's kind of what's going on. These disciples of Jesus, likely in their teens, are standing there like watchdogs, not letting other children get to him. You just can almost feel it. Like the picture is hilarious. You guys are kids. I've taken you guys under my wing, and you're going to try and keep these other kids from me. He's indignant. And now, maybe I'm reading into it a little bit, but why would Jesus have gotten so upset? And then he says this very bizarre thing. Whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child will not enter it. Children receive things horribly. You have to force them to say please. You've got to force them to say thank you. If they don't like it, you have to force them to learn how to be kind anyway, because a child's natural reaction to a gift that they're not thrilled about is tears and screaming. I mean, it is like the childish part of a child makes this comment feel bizarre. Makes it feel so backwards. And like always, what we normally do with these passages is we sort of there was a Bible teacher who described it as caging a blue parakeet, right? We like to take that very strange bird and box it up in a cage, right? And so we typically do that with this passage, and we say, well, you have to be innocent like a child, because when it comes to sin and sin separating you from God, we believe that God has grace for children who are not old enough to understand right from wrong, and so your innocence has to be the same level of innocence as a child, and sure, I think that's there. I think that's a great way to understand part of what Jesus is saying. But what if Jesus was not trying to make the point that we need to be childish, but that we need to be more childlike? And what if there's a difference in those two exactly the same words, right? Like, what if Jesus is doing something more here? Rather than stepping outside the bounds of all the rest of the teaching of the Bible that harps on maturity and growth and transformation, and then in this one moment, Jesus said, actually, you need to revert to your childish ways. What if he's trying to highlight parts of children that can, in fact, like Dad said this morning, teach us something about what it means to follow Jesus? There are a lot of them. We're going to look at a handful of those tonight, and hopefully some of these will, spark some of your own experience and show you that maturity might mean looking more childlike than you think. So when it comes to how can being childlike make us the kind of person who can receive or enter the kingdom of heaven, I think the first thing that we need to look at with kids is we've got to look at their perspective. Kids or perception, the way kids see the world is often a beautiful thing. First, think about the way a child sees his or herself. They think they're amazing. Have you noticed this? Kids have a tendency to come out of the womb with a level of confidence that is unmatched and in a really beautiful way. It doesn't tend to turn into arrogance very often. Very often, all right? We're generalities here, all right? But listen, kids think they're great. Watch how fast I can run. How many kids have you heard tell you that? They're the fastest thing they've ever seen. They're probably as fast as a car. They've never tried, but they could probably race a car. You know what? Time me. And then you tell them the time, 38 seconds to run down the sidewalk. And they're like, that's probably amazing. I don't know, but it sounds really fast. Listen, kids have this self-confidence, this self-assurance, not just that they think they're good at things, but they also think they're worth your attention. Have you noticed this? Kids, they have absolutely no time for whatever you've got going on because they've got something to tell you. And it is the most important thing in your world, let alone theirs. Do you know where my toy is usually the end of the question. But they'll just nag and ask, and there's this underlying assumption that what I have to say is important. It's valuable. Kids don't come up to you and go, you won't care about this. When was the last time you guys heard a 6, 7, 8-year-old say, nah, it's okay, you really won't care about this? They don't say it, ever. You will care about everything they care about because they're so sure of who they are in that regard. There was a commercial a lot of years ago, like 7 or 8 years ago at this point. It was for Dove skincare. Do you notice how commercials and the products don't match anymore? Like they just tell a sad story and then Farmers Insurance. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, this was a Dove commercial, and it was about how kids, specifically girls' confidence breaks at a certain age, usually around adolescence, 11, 12, 13 years old. And so they asked a couple of girls in the commercial, show me how a girl runs. And these girls were maybe 8 or 9 years old. Show me how a girl runs. And the girls, full game face, pumped their arms as hard as they could and ran in place. And then they said, show me, next girl, show me how a girl runs. She's 8, 7 years old, and she's just as fast as she can, pumping her legs, right? And then they asked a 17 or 18-year-old girl, show me how a girl runs. And you know what she did? Right? It was a completely different ballgame. There's something about children. They don't have stereotypes. They don't have presets. They don't have reasons not to be confident. They are confident. They think they're amazing. And they are in so many ways. Listen, we need to be able to see ourselves the way that kids see ourselves. Now, listen, I know none of us are as amazing as children think they are. I know we've had a lot more years to do a lot more dumb things. I know that we've made a lot bigger mistakes than any 5 or 6-year-old could imagine. But there's this thing that God says to us. He says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him won't perish but can have eternal life. For God so loved, you guys have all heard the preachers do this. I'm a preacher. I'm doing this now. For God so loved you. For God so loved Joseph. For God so loved Tommy. For God so loved Moses that he gave his only begotten son. Kids get that. You don't have to explain it or intellectualize it for them. They just, he thinks I'm awesome. They have an easy time seeing themselves. And unfortunately, we're a bit like Abraham sometimes, where we know it and we intellectually understand it, but we can't really see it. So in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 14, and we've looked at this a number of different times. It's actually the center of a chiasm. There are a lot of really cool things going on. But at its most basic, it says that God created the sun, the moon, and stars, and he appointed them for signs and for seasons. So why, when we walk outside and look up and see all these big stars, why are they there? Well, they're for you. They're for you. God made them for you. He made the whole world perfect for you to live in it. He must think you're pretty great too. Joshua referenced the verse that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. God sees all the inadequacies. God sees all the parts of you that aren't great. And he still thinks you're worth it. Kids don't have a problem believing that about themselves. For some reason, adults do. So if we want to be childlike, we need to change the way that we see ourselves. We also need to change the way that we see others. Kids have a beautiful way of seeing the heart of a person rather than the outside of a person. And I think about all of this, and it's maybe more nuanced than I'm making it at the moment, but who's the most beautiful person in a child's life? What's their mom, right? My mom is the most beautiful person in the world. Why? Well, let me let you in on a secret. Children see their mom in their most unbeautiful versions. Not that Courtney has any of those, but morning, unmade up, bedhead, no shower, the power went out and we didn't get to, you know what I'm saying? And yet still, why? Like, why do kids see their mom and think, oh, she's just so beautiful? Because there's something that their mom does. There's something about who their mom is to them that is beautiful. It doesn't have anything to do with how her hair was fixed. Unless you're Bonnie, and then hair has to be down. When you put your hair up, she can't stand it. I don't know why. That's how she's always been. But listen, you get what I'm saying. There's something deeper that children see in their mom. And they see it as beautiful because they see the heart, the care, the love, the commitment, the time that has been poured into them. Kids also have a way of seeing needs of others. They see when, we'll talk about this in just a couple minutes, but kids have a way of seeing the needs of others, the heart of others, rather than just their outward appearance. And kids also see God differently. And maybe this isn't an exact one-to-one. It's difficult for kids to conceptualize a God, but the way that kids think about their parents, I think, is a beautiful parallel. Kids see mom and dad as a safe place. If a child gets scared out in public, what do? Well, it's very quick and reflexive. They run to mom and dad, or mom or dad. Usually mom and acceptable if dad is there and he's the only one I can find, right? Like they run and they grab onto the leg, or they jump up into the arms, or they just stand right next to. Why? Because mom or dad is a place of safety. You think of all the different psalms that refer to God as a refuge for my soul. Kids get that when it comes to mom and dad. And so the way kids see their parents, I think, helps us understand how we ought to look at God. They also think their parents are incredible. How many different fights have you heard between schoolyard kids about whose dad would win in a fight, or whose dad would win in a race, or whose dad can lift more weight? Like, you talk about it like they're superheroes. Like, these are debates you should have between Superman and Batman, and yet there's something about children that the way they see their parents, listen, my dad could beat up your dad. I don't know if kids say that anymore, but that was the argument back when I was a kid. It was always about beating up, right? Anyway, like, this is just the way kids see their parents. Their parents are safety, their refuge. Their parents are strong and powerful. The things my kids ask me if I can lift are outrageous. Dad, could you lift our car? Probably not. I think you could. Okay, cool. Like, this is just what kids think about their parents. And then kids do this other thing where they want to give their parents the things that they want. I'll try and make this a short story, but it's an awesome story. One time I got to high-five Michael Jordan. Okay? Actually, 2 times, but the first time was really life-changing. And the reason, maybe you don't understand, in my family, growing up, we had a hierarchy of important people, right? You had, like, God, Jesus, well below that, you had, like, Michael Jordan, and then Dad in terms of heroes, right? And so we had high respect for Michael Jordan in my house growing up, and still do. There's no debate. But it was I was 7. Was I 7? Michael Jordan's playing for the Washington Wizards. We lived in Pennsylvania. Dad took me to a basketball game, and Mom threatened his life that if you let him out of your sight, I'll kill you. You're taking my son to the murder capital of the world, was what she said back then. And within 10 minutes of getting to the arena, Dad found a group of arena staff gathering some kids and said, "What's going on?" And they said, "We're taking kids down onto the court to high-five the players as they come out of the tunnel." And so Dad let me out of his sight, of course. I was going to get to high-five Michael Jordan. Like, he's just right below Jesus. Kidding. This is a joke. Anyway, I went in and I high-fived MJ. It was a really big deal. They took us down, like, in the bowels of the arena and out onto the court, high-fived him, and Dad will tell you the story. As soon as it happened, I pulled my hand into my chest, and I held it, and I was holding my hand the whole way back up, and Dad was confused because my face was very somber, very serious. Like I said, I was only like 7. I can't really give you a lot of detail as to what I was thinking. I mostly remember the story. But when I got back up to the top, Dad was like, "What happened? Like, is everything okay? Please tell me everything's okay. Do you remember what your mother said?" Anyway, I said, "Yeah, of course, Dad. I just saved you some, right?" And so I put my hand out, and man, he took all of it, right? He took every ounce of that Michael Jordan sweat that I think was on my hand. Listen, why did that matter? Why do I share that story? Well, for one, to tell you I'm very cool. I high-fived Michael Jordan. But secondly, and more importantly, because I wanted to give my dad what he wanted. When Jesus says in John chapter 14, "If you love me, you'll keep my commandments," I think we think of that in a very transactional way, but think about it relationally. A child does what their parents want because they know it's what their parents want. They're not keeping their parents' commandments. They're not doing things for their parents because, it's the law. In fact, that doesn't work very well, I've found, with kids. They just take the spanking and move on. Like, when kids love their parents, those moments, it comes out, and you see, oh, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Because kids see their parents with love. Now, that's the first thing, I think, the way that kids see the world is a childlike way that we can be more like children. Secondly, I'll try and move a little bit quicker here, but the second thing is that kids love people really beautifully. Now, again, all of this with the caveat of most of the time, some of the time. We've got childish over here, and Jesus does not encourage us to be childish, okay? But then we've got these moments of childlike that I really believe change us, that are the kind of people that God wants us to be. And so when it comes to childlike love, I think kids do this really, really well. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's the famous love chapter where, it's so funny that we pull this chapter completely out of the context so often, like I'm going to do tonight, of course. But we do that, it's in like the middle of an argument that Paul's making. He's making an argument about church unity and church fellowship and not separating yourself by what spiritual gift you have. He segues the whole thing in chapter 12 with, even if you have all of these gifts, I will still show you a better way. Because he holds out loving people, caring and being committed and loving people, the action of love, as the most important thing a Christian can do. And I think kids are really good at this most of the time. Some of the time. Look at verse 7. These last four things that Paul says about love. He says that love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. There's something about love that has this very emotionally intelligent or emotionally connected component to it. Love bears all things. This idea of taking on the burden of others. Kids are excellent at it. Kids are excellent at this. In really funny ways sometimes, and in really beautiful ways other times. Have you ever been in a room and someone does something or tells a joke and everyone starts laughing, even the kids? Have you seen this happen? Kids will start laughing because a room is laughing, and they may or may not think that they've understood the joke. Sometimes kids will try and well, yeah, he said it this way. That was funny. And they'll have misunderstood but think they understood it. Some kids are honest enough to tell you, I have no idea. I was just laughing with everybody else. Kids are really good with rejoicing with people who are rejoicing. It's like they feel the vibe of a room and just try and match it. Also, kids are really good at sensing the emotions in a room on the other side of the spectrum. Have you ever seen a child at a funeral, too young to really understand what's happening, but still crying? There's something about kids. They take the emotional burden of others upon themselves somewhat naturally. I've noticed this. I was even talking to Courtney about this maybe 2 days ago. My kids do this. If Bonnie can tell I'm stressed, she will just start cleaning. It's the strangest thing. She'll come sit by me and scratch my back, a thing that I love. When Moses notices that mom is not right, he'll just come kind of snuggle up into her. Now, there's a battle because my emotions are not my child's job, but it's a really good thing for them to be loving like that. And so, as a parent, you kind of toe that line and try not to give your kids all of your baggage, but that's what kids do. They have this sense about them to people, and they try to bear with others, bear with others in all things. They also, kids believe all things. Yeah, of course they do. You know how many times I spun around and counted to 100 as a kid so that I could go to Pokemon Land? Way more than I care to admit. Well into the double digits as well. So, listen, kids believe all things. The fact that love believes all things, I think there are two connotations to this. One, is the really obvious one of trust. Love trusts. There is an element of unearned or well-established trust that love believes all things means. There's also this idea that love believes the best in all things that I think ties into the next one about hope. And so we'll kind of get to that in one second. But this idea of trust, the idea that a kid doesn't believe you is, like, it's not even in their vocabulary. You wake up in the morning and surprise a kid with a trip to Disney World. How many of them get up and say, "No way"? No, they just scream out of excitement, right? We're going to the moon. Oh, what? No, are you serious? Like, they just believe you because that's love. Kids are so good at this part of it. They just believe all things. And not only do they believe it, but they trust you. Great example of this. You guys know I'm a little, Dad would say reckless. Most of you would say dumb. I call it fun with my kids. I like to throw them in the air. They never even consider the possibility that I'll drop them. All of you do immediately every time, but they don't. They're so sure that I'm going to catch them that they tell me to do it again. Rosie, I love putting Rosie on we have an island in our kitchen, and I'll just plop her on the island, and we do this game where I'll just look at her, and I'll step like this and open my arms, and she laughs, and she goes, and just falls right into me. Sometimes she does it without me looking. And guess what? I've never dropped her. And she doesn't even consider the fact that I could. Why? Because she trusts me. Now, some of that is because I've caught her a lot of times, but some of it is because kids are reckless, loving little beings. They love without caution. And so I think that's another beautiful thing that we can learn about how kids choose to love other people. Love hopes all things. And there's something about this that, like, hope versus hopeless is kind of the idea that I come up with here. Kids are always expecting the best thing to happen next. Kids generally, you don't see very pessimistic kids. Kids who just are sure the car's not going to start. Kids who are just sure that, the day is going to end horribly. Kids always think things are going to turn up. It's a really beautiful thing about them. And they also, when it comes to people, believe the best in other people. I can't tell you, it's almost a trope, but the number of children who have been, victim might be a harsh way to say it, but have been through a divorce. And they just always believe that their parents are going to get back together. I mean, like, that's the whole plot of the movie It Takes Two and The Parent Trap, and then The Parent Trap from the 60s. Like, that. Why is that movie so powerful? Because love believes all things. These kids just they believe it. They know it. They're just sure. Reality is a bit different, can be far more harsh, but the beauty that children believe the best about people. They believe the best about the parent that isn't close to them. Listen, what if we just give them another chance, even when they know the situation? They're old enough to know the situation. Kids believe the best in people who have hurt them in the past. Kids have a commitment and a hope to them about the future that is, like, unreasonably positive. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Rather than the way we typically work, which is assume the worst and be moderately happy when you get something that's not the worst, kids assume the best and are moderately disappointed when it doesn't turn out that way. Or devastated, but only for a second. They have like a 2-second rebound rate, children, which is a really beautiful thing. And the last is children love in the way that it talks about enduring all things. Oh, children are unbelievably loyal. You think about, I think about Paul in 1 Corinthians 11, or 2 Corinthians 11, when he talks about being in shipwrecks and in perils of robbers and in perils of my own countrymen, and beaten and flogged and in prison, and a day and a night spent in the deep, and even greater than all this are my deep concern for all the churches. Paul lists all these things he's been through that he's had to endure because he's been teaching the gospel and spreading the gospel to all the world, right? Okay, well, yeah, that sounds like a crazy person, doesn't it? You'd think after one shipwreck, he'd be like, I'll just settle down with a church in Corinth or something, right? Like, I love them. I was there for a long time anyway. Paul, okay, maybe after the second flogging, he's like, yeah, no, I'm going to support someone else to go do it. But Paul has this like unrelenting endurance that he's going to do what he's going to do. He's going to commit no matter what. It's a beautiful thing. This is sometimes on a much smaller scale how kids work. I've watched my son, when he's working on a project, do the same thing 32 times because he just can't get it quite right. Usually, especially with Moses, it's an artistic project normally, but he'll cut something out and he'll be like, it needs to look like this. No, and he'll toss it to the side. Or he'll get some Legos and he'll try and put them together, and he just didn't have the dexterity, but there's something about it. He doesn't give up. He didn't give up for anything. Bonnie, on the other hand, she would have been done after the second time, but Moses has this very enduring characteristic to him. And oftentimes, children have that even in their, or especially, I should say, in their relationships. I remember when I was a kid, my mom, there were a group of kids that I played with all the time that I objectively didn't like, looking back on it now. Like, we didn't get along very well. We fought a lot. And one of these days, my mom, after playing with them, said, hey, why do you go play with them? Which is very much how my mom engaged me. She didn't say, you're not playing with them anymore. She just would want me to like notice it and ask me questions to get me to think about it. And so why are you still playing with them? You guys fight all the time. It doesn't seem like you really enjoy your time with them. And I responded with something to the effect of, well, they're my friends. Like, I guess, I guess. In my mind, like, yeah, you battle through some of this stuff. You got to fight through some of this stuff to be friends with people. And love endures all things. I think kids in moments can show us really what love looks like, especially at their best. The last one, I don't know the right way to say this, but why should we be childlike? Because children can often be very humble. At the beginning, I talked about how kids think they're awesome, but it doesn't ever seem to cross into arrogance. It's because they also know that they're not awesome, and they're okay with everyone else knowing that. It's surprising. One of the things that really highlights this is when kids don't know something, you know what they do? They ask, and it's super cool. I mean, younger kids, like as they get a little older, they get a little more embarrassed, but you'd be, especially when you're trying to tell them something, you're telling them a story, they'll stop you in the middle of a sentence and say, what does famished mean, right? What is starving? You gotta dumb it down. Really, really, really hungry. No, hungry, I know that one. Okay, got it, right? You're trying to explain something to them and they're like, I can't do that. And you're like, well, you could probably, no, I can't reach the microwave. I'm not tall enough. They don't have any problem knowing that they're inadequate in some way. They don't have any problem like letting people know that they're inadequate. There's something about a kid that even in their sense of self, they know that they can't do everything. They know that they're not quite enough sometimes, and it doesn't break them. It's just part of it. This might be what they say, I need my parents' help. Yeah, man, let me tell you, I really, really hope that I can instill that exact thought in all of my children when they become teenagers, okay? Like, I really want them when they're in high school to be able to say that exact word and not make a bad decision worse. I really hope that when my kids get to be 30, they can call mom and dad and say, I don't know how to do my taxes. Because does anyone actually know how to do their taxes? I hope that when my kids are bigger, they can maintain this level of humility to ask someone around them for help. Little kids are excellent at it. And if we're going to be childlike in the good way, I think this sense of humility is a really good way to be. It's how Christians ought to be as it relates to God. In John chapter 15, where Jesus talks about, I am the vine and you are the branches, what else does he say? Apart from me, you can do nothing. Boy, do we need to be told that as adults, don't we? Apart from me, you can do nothing. Sometimes, way too often, our actions say very loudly, we got it, God, we're good. But if we're going to be childlike rather than childish, there's a sense of humility, a knowingness that we need God. This is actually a lesson that God took a really, really, really long time with a really big object lesson to try and teach Israel. When Israel got out of Egypt, you remember what their number one complaint was? We're hungry, no food. We need food. God brought us out here to starve. And so God was like, okay, well, tell them there's going to be some manna on the ground in the morning. And don't let them over-collect, right? Tell them only to grab exactly what they need for that day, or it'll spoil. I'm not even going to let them over-harvest the manna. And it'll be there again in the morning, the next morning. And so they wake up the next morning and there's this stuff. And they're like, what is this? And so that's what they call it. What is this? Manna. And they gather it and they eat it and they're filled. And the ones who gathered too much, it all spoiled by the next morning. But guess what else happened the next morning? There was more manna. It's almost like God is trying to beat it into their head every morning. You need to depend on me. I've got you. You can't do this by yourself. I've got you. Oh, you have a farm? You don't need my manna? How about no rain? Oh, you have your own water supply from up the road? How about a tornado? Like, listen, it doesn't matter how good you get at irrigation and farming, you still need me. Have you heard the story? I'm sure I heard it from Dad, so I'm sure he's told it before, but a group of men think they've really figured it out. They really think they figured it out, and they've decided they can do anything God can do. And so they challenge God to a man-making competition. Have you heard this one? Right? And God says, okay, fine, I'll accept. We'll have a man-making competition. Let's see how it goes. You guys go first. And so the group of men are like, okay, all right, as we've prepared for this. And they lean down to the ground, and they grab a handful of dirt, and God says, no. Get your own dirt. Right? Like, okay, the point, we can do nothing apart from God. Every breath, every moment, every step is something he's given us. Kids have a much easier time recognizing their inadequacies and their need for help from their parents. And if we're going to be childlike, I think we need to reflect that level of humility and recognize our need for God. So, Matthew chapter 18, Jesus really, I think, highlights this because it's sort of Matthew's version of what happens in Luke chapter 10. Matthew 18 and verse 4. Jesus says, we can back up to verse 3. Jesus said, truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. This is, he even uses the same phrase. Like, what part of childlikeness should we have? Jesus says you need to humble yourself like a child. Recognize your inadequacy. Realize you can't save yourself and you need God to save you. If you can't do that, you're going to be trying to save yourself and, unfortunately, not saved because you can't. Children have a humility. Jesus emphasized that part in the passage here in Matthew. And I think there are probably a lot of other ways that being childlike is a blessing. I'm sure some of you, as we've been talking through the lesson, have had thoughts of children of your own that you've known or that you've loved, and you just thought, yeah, I remember learning that lesson from that child. Yeah, I remember seeing that beautiful thing that one time. We could probably go for a lot longer than this on ways that children teach us about what it means to be a follower of God. But these handful were mine for tonight. We need to change and be childlike in the way that we see the world, the way we see ourselves, God, and others. We need to be childlike in the way that we love recklessly, right? That we bear all things, hope all things, endure all things, and believe all things. And we need to be childlike in the way that we are humble, the way that we humble ourselves and recognize our need for God at every turn, that apart from him, we can do nothing. So why be childlike? Why be like children? I think Matthew 18 says it plainly. Whoever does not become like children will never enter the kingdom of heaven. There's an element of this that our soul is at stake. We're either childlike or we're outside of the kingdom of heaven. And so I think those are reason enough. But more than that, I think we need to be childlike because these characteristics that are in children are really just a reflection of the character of our God that we serve. Our God, the mighty creator of the entire universe, chooses to be humble, humbled himself, and took the form of a servant. Our God, the most powerful and worthy creator in all the world, all the cosmos, loves us in ways that don't make reasonable sense. And our God, who knows everything, knows the good, the bad, the ugly, and the really ugly, still thinks we're awesome and worth it and special. If we can take on these characteristics of children, what we're really doing is taking on these characteristics of the God that we claim to serve. And so tonight, if you need to recognize your dependence on God and obey the gospel, or if you need prayers of the church, one thing kids are really good at is listening and forgetting all the bad parts. If you need prayers, I think we can be like kids tonight. We'll listen, we'll pray with you, and we'll forget all the bad parts and love you recklessly, the way our God does, the way children do. And if you need any other prayers of the church or help in any way, come while we stand and sing.